Welcome to the BOGART Effect, a wealthy wisdom podcast. The following BOGART Effect podcast is intended for general information purposes only. The information discussed is no substitute for personalized investment advice from BOGART or another investment professional. Please see important disclosure information at the end of the presentation. I'm James Bogart. With me today is Brian Windsor, and we're going to talk about 2024.
Absolutely.
What has changed and what impact that's going to have. You know, and I think, Brian, really, what's the objective today?
I think the objective today is to have our listeners understand what are some of the things that we need to be mindful of. Entering a new year, how do we think about our finances in a complex manner, but with understanding the simple and easy things that we can do to better ourselves and be more successful.
So elaborate. What does that really mean?
Well, really what it breaks down to is understanding certain changes to the IRS tax code, understanding how changes to contribution amounts have increased, understanding how things like Medicare premiums have changed. And when you think about all of the different things that are in the sea of the financial wealth world, how does it boil down to you?
And what impact does it have?
Absolutely. What are the impacts?
So for a lot of our clients, we like to start with planning. Planning is a big part of the engagement that we do.
Yeah.
One of the counseling and pieces of advice I always say is we start the year, let's revisit our plan.
Yeah.
Right. And really getting into the details of that, let's have a budget.
Right.
Let's talk about what our goals are for the year. Let's talk about our investments and how we're allocating the respective buckets within the year, and then how does that integrate with the plan itself?
Yeah.
So, why don't we talk about what numbers have changed for 2024? Yeah. And frankly, I think it's probably best, let's talk about the numbers that are changing for everyone.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the numbers that are going to change or impact those that are in the accumulation phase of their lives. And then let's talk about the numbers for those that are in the deaccumulation phase of their lives, distribution phase, right? So for everyone, what happened to tax rates this year?
Tax rates went up.
Yep.
Tax rates went up. As far as the amount of income, I should say. It's not like your tax rates, it just went up. But no, it's the IRS has increased the amount of taxable income that you can have within respective tax brackets.
Yeah, so the brackets themselves did not change.
Brackets themselves have not changed. More to come there.
Yeah,
we'll
true.
wait and see.
Well, again, can't ignore it is an election year.
It is an election year.
So we'll have a lot of conversation, I'm
is
sure.
It an election year? I haven't heard that. No one's talking about that.
But, we saw a 3.8% increase on the respective brackets, right? So it's still 10%, 12%, 22%, 24, 32, 35, 37. Yeah. That part hasn't changed. Now, we do know in 2025, those are going to change.
Yeah, they're going to sunset.
But they're most likely going to see some legislative reform, probably to some extent before then.
Yeah.
Standard deductions went up.
Standard deductions gone up. You now have single. If you file single, $14,600 as your standard deduction. If you're married, filing jointly is $29,200. But then don't forget, if you are over the age of 65, then you have the ability of doing an additional deduction, whether single or married, for about $1,550.
Yeah, $1,550 for each, right?
Yeah.
So for a married couple, you're getting an additional $3,100 on top of that. So remember, these are standard deductions. Every household has the ability to look at, do they itemize? Do they take a standard deduction? Part of the 2018 tax reform was really raising those standard deduction levels to a point where the goal and objective was to simplify tax returns, less people who were to be itemizing.
Right.
They did achieve that, by the way. I mean, we went from over 15.8 million taxpayers were doing itemized deductions prior to the 2018 tax reform down to 5.2 million itemized returns. So, we've got 336 million Americans and about half of them are filing tax returns. So the reality is those numbers have come down dramatically.
Right.
So we've talked about deductions, we've talked about tax rates.
Yeah, I want to talk about capital gain rates too.
Yep.
You mentioned taxable income and how the levels have increased, but also the capital gains brackets have also increased. And that's, as we'll probably talk about in a little bit, that can be to your advantage. Again, depending on your situation, but if you are single, $47,000 you can have and be in a 0% tax rate, $94,000 now.
Yep.
If you're married filing jointly. So there is some breadth there to get access to capital without any tax.
And that is up from 89,000 married last year, 43,000 last year single.
Absolutely. And what you did last year with your advisor or what you've done with yourself, you don't want to replicate it again word for word, right? There's a rhythm that's happening with these changes, and as we'll talk about, but having that right plan in place is going to be critical.
100%.
And understanding of all of this.
And I want to emphasize one of the points you just made, 0% capital gains rates. So it is a strategy that not everyone can consider, especially if you're in the accumulation phase, you're working, you have income, et cetera. But for a lot of our retired clients, that's a very active conversation that we have, is based upon how you're generating your paycheck, your income, your cash flow. We do have the ability to optimize, bring your taxable income very, very low so that we can look at ways of selling highly appreciated stock positions and not pay any tax on it. Now, let's talk about the next iterations. That's the 12% bracket or below. At 250,000 of income married, 200,000 individual, that's when the Obamacare tax sets in, net investment income tax sets in at 3.8. So really capital gains rates go from 0 to 15%, to 18.8% at 250,000. And then if you have income over 583,000 married, you're now at 23.8%, right? So they are progressive in nature, but it's important to know capital gains rates are always lower than ordinary income rates.
That's true. One other caveat to that, as we're talking a little bit about changes to it, the estate numbers are changing, specifically gifting. Gifting has increased now to $18,000 a year. Now that's per person per individual. So husband and wife want to gift to a child, that's $36,000. Think about where you are within your retirement plan or accumulation plan, distribution plan. You and I work with a lot of clients that are in this gifting phase, where I hear this all the time now. I don't want to leave my kids X amount of dollars that you say the financial plan is going to leave. But instead, I'd rather them have that opportunities to see these assets now. I'm going to tie that back into what you were just saying about that 0% cap gains rate. So think about whether you have children that are in lower tax brackets than you, whether that you have children that are in college and really don't have a lot of income. Could be a pretty solid, again, possibly to be thinking about, well, they could have these assets, sell these assets, and no taxes.
Well, and you said possibly, and I'm assuming you're alluding to kiddie tax, right? So
I mentioned the college. That's why I was kind of thinking more post age.
Yeah. So dependent upon the situation, it's another planning opportunity for sure. And you'll notice the theme is bringing everything back to the plan. Now, you mentioned 18,000. Let's talk a little bit more about what that actually means for anyone who doesn't know. I mean, so when it comes to giving, we have what's called the annual gift exclusion, which is this $18,000 number that you just mentioned. Now, that $18,000, that means that we don't have to do anything with our tax returns. There's literally no paperwork that has to be done. So the IRS is giving us $18,000 per person, per giftee, right? Where we don't have to do anything. It's very simple. Now, as soon as we go over that threshold, now we have to start talking about mechanisms that we're going to be potentially triggering tax, or eating up some of the lifetime gift exemption, right? So for 2024, we actually had a very big increase on that lifetime gift exemption, which is also the estate tax threshold, which is 13.61 million, right? Which is up from 13.06. For a lot of the households that we're working with, that's, and by the way, that's 13.61 per person, right? So really, we're getting 27.2 million that theoretically would pass through their estate completely tax-free.
Assuming married.
Married, yes, thank you. Sorry, assuming married. Single, 13.61, but regardless, I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of wealth that can transfer without any estate tax conversations at the federal level.
Right.
Now, if we're in the fortunate position where we're over that threshold, one of the best ways to mitigate that is those annual gifts that you're talking about there, the 18,000 each. But one thing to note, right, we're talking about kind of some of the things we're looking at in the future, And earlier we had mentioned in 2025, we're going to see a sunset.
Yeah.
So that sunset's going to take us from the 13.61 million all the way back to 5 million each. And that is going to index up. So I think that it's probably going to be somewhere in the 6.5 million range. But yes, if you're in the fortunate position where your combined estate, including real estate, portfolio, investments, is going to be over that 13 million number-ish, well, yeah, we need to already be having some proactive conversations about that, I think.
So let's talk about how we get there.
Yeah.
And talk about the changes that this has had on individuals that are now in this accumulation phase.
Sure.
Couple big things to note is how the IRS is now allowing you to put more into your workplace plans, but also into your personal retirement accounts. So currently right now, we've seen an increase with the amount that you can put into your 401k, 403b, 457, workplace plans. It's $23,000 now that I can put in. Now that's not my employer.
Correct.
That's just me as an individual that I can put in. Now, if I'm over the age of 50, I get access to those catch-up contributions. That is $7,500. So in order to get to where I want to be longer term, I can actually put away over $30,000, $30,500 into my workplace plans. Then with my personal accounts,
let's not leave those yet.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So total number, you can actually, so there's the amount that you can put in, then there's the employer match portion, but you actually can put in, for most 401k plans, after-tax contributions as well. So that number, frankly, is 69,000 plus the 7,500 for catch-up, so a total of 76,500 if you're over the age of 50. Correct. So the reason I paused you there for a second is because that does lead to a planning opportunity potentially for anyone who's in the fortunate position to be able to save more.
True.
And that's what introduces this concept of mega backdoor Roth conversions, where we'll do a little bit of math on the planning side. We'll get some after-tax money into the 401k to then use that as a conduit to get money over into a Roth IRA. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's one of these planning elements that we'll talk about going into the new year.
For sure, absolutely. And every 401k, every 403b is going to be different. So that's why it's important to partner with an advisor that can understand your plan document. It's just not, the record keeper might not necessarily be the best resource for you to reach out to. A lot of times you call and you're getting somebody that might not know the ins and outs of it, but if you have your advisor that is dedicated or work with other individuals as part of your workplace plan, then that level of expertise can certainly provide a lot of value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on the individual plan, sorry, I interjected, but we can do 7,000 for IRAs and Roth IRAs for 2024. Yeah. 1,000 of catch-up. Now in 2023, it was 6,500 with 1,000 of catch-up.
True.
And so we saw a little bit of an uplift on the base amount if you're under 50, but the catch-up stayed the same. The reason that I brought up 2023 is we have all the way until April 15th still.
You got some time
to do the 2023 if we haven't done that yet. So again, from a planning perspective and dependent upon how much someone has in terms of ability to save, we could look at doing 2023 to catch that up and then visit on 2024. We have all the way until April 15th of 2025 to do the 2024 contribution if we need more time.
Yeah. Right. And to go back to talking about like gifting, what we just mentioned, how many tasks or notes do we have with our clients' accounts currently is to make sure that we're helping fund our clients' children's accounts. So not only are we helping pass wealth off to the next generation, but we're also allowing them to save on their own as well. So there's a lot that can go into when it comes to making IRA contributions and thinking about your gifting strategy.
Absolutely. Well, and related to that, right? Because the kids most likely are going to be in a lower income bracket and eligible to do Roth contributions. So when we're talking about this gifting that we can be doing on an annual basis, and if we talk about this whole wealth transfer conversation, one of the best things that mom and dad or grandpa and grandma can do is gift into Roth IRAs, because then the money's now growing completely tax-free and able to be withdrawn tax-free, assuming someone's 59 and a half and that Roth has been in existence for 5 years.
Yeah, and then the caveat towards that, and this is how some of the numbers have changed with the IRS, is that if you're going to do a strategy like that, gift assets to my child, to have them put in their Roth, if they're filing single, and under a income of 146,000, they can do the full 7.
Yep.
If they're married filing jointly and their income is below 230, they can do the full amount as well. So there's some phase outs above that, but if they're under those thresholds, they then have the ability of putting that in. So just that caveat is there are some thresholds.
Well, and you hit a really important point, which is they have to have earned income in order to be able to do this. So like grandpa and grandma, if your grandchildren are under a certain age, maybe they don't have income yet.
It's time to put those kids to work, James.
I know.
We were paying for their child care, we're paying for their education. It's time for them to help out.
But as they
have
summer jobs, as they're doing paper rounds, lifeguarding, whatever it is, right? If they start having an income number, then that's when we can start looking at this. And by the way, even if it's not the full amount, so to do the full $7,000 for 2024, they have to have $7,000 of income.
There you go.
But let's say, for example, your child has income of $3,000. Well, you can do $3,000 into the Roth. So you're capped at the 7 is the max, but you have to have earned income at that level in order to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But fantastic way as we're talking about planning for a new year and giving strategies, and especially if you want to have an impact on your legacy kids, grandkids, getting money into the Roth hands down is probably one of the best mechanisms.
And then another way of helping out with it, as you're being accumulator, and this is very important to my wife, who does a lot of our family budgeting and helping with medical planning, is HSA contributions, right? So those have also increased for 2024. If you are a single individual, that's $4,150. That's up from $3,800 from last year. And then if you're a family HSA, it's $8,350, and that's up from $7,750 from last year.
Do me a favor, explain what an HSA is.
A health savings account. So if you have a high deductible medical plan with your employer, they will offer you a health savings account. A health savings account is going to allow me to put pre-tax money, just like my 403B, just like my 401k. I can put pre-tax money into my health savings account. One or two things I can do from that. Either one, I can then distribute it anytime that I need to help pay for medical expenses. So if I have a bill, I can help I see a medical bill come in, I distribute money from HSA. I don't pay taxes on that. I do not pay taxes on that. So that's a way of paying my medical costs in a pre-tax basis. Now, another trick though, that, I know a lot of individuals that do, myself included, is that if your employer allows you to invest the HSA, I don't necessarily have to use that money this year. I don't have to use that money next year. So if my employer allows my HSA contributions to go into an investment, I can grow that money tax-free. Then when the time comes, when I need to have a major medical expense, you and I are both fathers and young kids. We've just had big medical expenses recently with hospital costs with our children. Great opportunity to use the HSA as a withdrawal to pay those larger medical bills.
Well, and again, the reason for it is you're putting money in on a before tax basis so that you can take the money out and not pay any tax, assuming it's going for qualified medical expenses. I know I had a Freudian slip there, but next one, while we're in the accumulation phase, a lot of the conversations we have are around 529s and saving for college. So on an annual basis, we can do the 18,000 we talked about, right? So that's husband and wife, or mom and dad, right? So 36. But with 529s, don't we have a provision where we can do 5 years, right? All at once. So that's another way for this gifting legacy planning conversation. You can get money moved into a 529 plan at a very significant number. 36,000 times 5, right? So 180 grand, one clip. If you have the excess funds to be able to do it. But the thing that's new about 529s, that just changed at the end of last year, is, so 529s, they're college savings accounts, right? You can use up to $10,000 a year for for private school, pre-college. And then as long as it's a qualified expense once they're in college, you could take the money out. It's grown completely tax-free with these college savings accounts. But if there's a residual amount up to $35,000, now this is a new law as of the end of 2022, that if there's $35,000 of residual left over, and as long as that 529's been in existence for 15 years, we can actually have that residual $35,000 be used to move over into a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
So this is a new thing where we used to be so sensitive. We didn't want to overfund 529 plans for this reason. Now, all of a sudden, there's actually a little bit of logic behind maybe we put a little more in.
Yeah, it's actually hilarious that you're just saying that. Lisa and I, my wife, just had this conversation not more than a week ago when we were updating our financial plan. So we're both certified financial planners, and what we do in January is we assess our financial plan and where we are. But that is part of the conversation of saying, we live in Virginia. We're thinking about saving for Virginia-based schools. Based off of what we're currently saving, are we getting to a tipping point where we're doing too much? And whether that's just from our savings or how the markets have accumulated, that's part of the conversation now.
It has to be.
Of saying, well, if we're thinking about helping our children another leg up, a great way for them to save with their time value, having monies in a Roth to get started at such a young age, I mean, it could be a really good move.
Well, and you think about it, right? 15 years of accumulation in the 529, it's probably going to grow. Yeah. Should grow, right? And then once we're done paying for whatever the college education expenses are, which by the way, doesn't have to just be undergraduate. It could be postgraduate, doctoral work, if they want to be lawyers, et cetera. It's all there. And all of that would come out tax-free if it's for qualified education expenses. Yeah. But if there's a residual amount, absolutely. It's a nice way to get them a nice jump start onto that whole tax-free savings. Yeah. So we've talked about kind of everyone. We've talked about the accumulation phase. Let's get into a little bit on the deaccumulation phase.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned taxes, right? So a lot of our retirees were very sensitive towards taxes and tax rates. That helps us as planners work along certain boundaries of thinking about how much for Roth conversions and how much we can distribute, how much capital gains we can accumulate. But I think for those that are over 65, one of the things that has changed is Medicare brackets.
Absolutely.
And Medicare premiums have gone up from 164 to 174 as the base. But in addition to that, based off of your income from 2022, that's going to now impact what you're paying in Medicare premiums. Those amounts have increased from 2023. So for individuals that are in certain levels of income, you're already seeing it. They're already seeing the fact that their medical expenses are increasing. Now, the one caveat towards that is if your income has been consistent, maybe you're just on a pension and that's not changing, you don't have a cost of living adjustment associated with it. If you're falling under a certain income limit, you may actually fall in the rung below you from where you used to be. So that's where it's important, I think, to check out what your 2022 income is and seeing where you fall under now. And then again, that's part of the planning process.
Has to be.
If that's where we are now, yeah, generally these things increase and generally the income levels also increase. But if I'm thinking about the decisions that I make in 2024, that's going to impact what my payments are in 2026. So we use where we are today as that gliding path to understand, again, if I make these decisions, what's that impact going to be via, Medicare premiums, but also the IRMA costs that are associated with those.
Yeah, and frankly, this is a big surprise for a lot of our clients, right? When we're doing this planning work and all of a sudden it's like, hey, the decisions I made 2 years ago are impacting my medical costs now. Yeah. And so again, the essence of this discussion is coming back to your plan, the educational process associated with said decisions. Because when it comes down to effective planning, it's not decisions we make 1 year. Right. It's the cumulative effect year over year over year. We're going to have, from an investment perspective, we're going to have good years, we're going to have bad years. But what we have found time after time is following that plan, following that guidance, interfacing these discussions around tax implications. That really is where we see the logarithmic value. Yep. And yes, the impact on taxable income is one variable that has to be brought into consideration. Sure. But the reason it's so important to talk about Medicare is because, for example, when we talk about tax optimization, we talk about the need to do things like Roth conversions. If you're in the fortunate position where you have big IRA accounts, big pre-tax accounts, yeah, the temptation might be in early years of retirement, let's bring taxable income super, super low and not pay any tax at all. But those pre-tax accounts are going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to grow unencumbered. And this is why the planning is so important with this discussion, because all of a sudden you get to the RMD age, which could be 73 or 75, depending upon what year you were born. Yeah. But now all of a sudden you're forced to take money out of the pre-tax accounts, and where we were being very fortunate in a low tax environment for earlier years, and we were maybe only thinking about Medicare premiums and bringing taxable income down. But all of a sudden we get to age 75 and boom, we're logarithmically increasing our effective tax rates, and it has this adverse surprise.
The IRS is going to get theirs.
Of course.
They're going to get theirs. Whether they get it now or they get it later, they will. And one of the things that our jobs are as financial advisors is to allow our clients to see through the tunnel, see through the weeds, because I can be short-sighted about a lot of things in my life, for sure, absolutely. But if I can have some expertise, a partnership that allows me to see, if you continue to do X, this is going to lead to, could be some severe problems. And there's this unknown in all of this, tax rates. And where are they going to be in the future?
Of course.
I don't know if you've had many clients. In my 17 or 18 years in this industry, I can't tell you many clients that have told me tax rates are going down. Yeah. I think that taxes are going to go down. If I'm on the other side, where I think the majority of individuals are, and I think tax rates are going to go up, everything I just told this client that's going to be a problem in the future is exponentially going to be worse. So if I'm looking at this from a holistic perspective, tying it all in as far as how does this impact me? Well, number one is if I am saving more, which if I can, you always save more.
Of course.
But this could lead to further tax implications.
The financial advisor and us, we're going to have you save every dollar you make, leave nothing left to live. We'll have you work to your 80, die at 81. Plan's going to work great.
Yeah.
I mean, bad joke, but there's a lot of truth to it. The longer you work, the more you accumulate.
Yeah.
Same time too, the more you save, the more you're going to have.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, a plan is a very basic math equation, right? What's our withdrawal rate versus, what is the level of withdrawal versus what is our portfolio value at? That withdrawal rate ultimately is what dictates long-term success, but it also dictates the need for planning. If we're at a place where we're drawing at 6, 7, 8, 9%, we know what the plan's going to do. It's not very good long-term. But if we're at a 1.5%, 2%, 3% withdrawal rate, well, it's a high level of confidence that it's going to grow, it's going to accumulate, and then it compounds some of these problems, right? So we've talked about a lot today.
Yeah.
What is the takeaway? What's the impact of this discussion?
Impact is you have more breadth to take advantage of saving more or moving more money, whether it's for conversion opportunities, whether it's for gifting opportunities. Ultimately, it is reassessing your financial plan and reassessing your outlook for your life.
Yep.
And the best way to do that is partnering with your financial advisor, certified financial planner, to assess how does these changes impact me and what should I be doing about it?
Well, and realistically, this is something you should be doing every single year, at a minimum, right?
Yeah.
And integrating the conversations around not only what am I spending, what am I saving, what are my goals, how's the investments performing, but how do we optimize, right? And it's the investments, it's the tax, it's the planning, it's estate planning. We want to be taking a very holistic approach to it. And every single year, there's no better opportunity to reassess it than now, beginning of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, hey, thank you for the time today. This was a great discussion. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Looking forward to answering any questions you have. The previous podcast was intended for general information purposes only. The information discussed is no substitute for personalized investment advice from Bogart or another investment professional. Different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk, and it should not be assumed that the future performance of any specific investment, strategy, or service will be profitable, suitable, or successful. Bogart is not a law firm or accounting firm, and no portion of its services should be construed as legal or accounting advice. There is no guarantee a client will experience a certain level of results if Bogart is engaged. Our brochure describing services and fees can be found at www.bogartwealth.com.